Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's afternoon when I'm starting this recording, and I am here with Dr. Shahab Tabesh, who is at Locke Street Dental. He is just down the street from Footprints Music, where this is being recorded, and they've been in business now for a little while. I think on Locke Street. Anyways, Dr. Tabesh is a graduate from the University of Toronto. Faculty of Dentistry in 2008. He was the president of the Dental Student Society at the Faculty of Dentistry and the recipient of multiple awards for his contribution to the dental school. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Kinesiology and Health Science from York University, which means he didn't have a lot of time. And welcome to the show. Great to chat with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, both on the podcast and on Locke Street. And I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today. I've enjoyed some of your other podcast guests, and hopefully we can have a good one today.
Well, thanks. A lot of people, as we just talked about just before recording, might not think of a dentist as a business, but it really is. You really have to think of many different, processes and doing, specific tasks that are completely related to business on top of doing the actual work of dentistry. So just to start out, which is what I ask everyone, how did you get to pursuing dentistry, and what keeps you passionate about it all these years?
I it's a bit of a funny road. And like most things in life, there's multiple layers to how I ended up here. It definitely wasn't a childhood fantasy to be a dentist. I'd much rather be a professional athlete or a famous musician. But I learned early on in life that I have no musical talent and no fast twitch fibers. So
I don't believe that. I believe you have talent, but we'll talk about that another time.
We can talk about that. How did I become a dentist? There's a few layers to it. I'm an immigrant kid. So I moved to Canada when I was 8, and some of my first experiences with the dentist here were very good. Because come from a society where maybe we didn't have as much access or as easy access, or maybe I didn't. And I remember being a little kid and going to the community clinics to have things looked at and cavities fixed. And I remember being intrigued by that. That, I think, like most people, childhood experience is important.
Yeah.
As I got a little bit older, I, like most teenagers, had a ton of cavities. So every time I went to the dentist, I kind of looked around and had a bit of a conversation and tried to figure out what this guy was doing in my mouth as I stared at the ceiling. And then really it started to take hold when I went to university. Got braces when I was 18. My parents couldn't afford it when I was younger. And around 18, they said, hey, we got a little bit of a budget. You can get some braces. And things lined up nicely because I got my braces right when I started university. I started to get really good marks at university. And every 6 weeks, when I would show up to my dental appointment, the orthodontist would say, what are you doing? And I told her my plans in life, which had nothing to do with dentistry. And every 6 weeks, she would say, you should be a dentist. For 2 years, every 6 weeks, she said that.
Wow.
And then at the same time, I met a really pretty girl at school who we were kind of becoming friendly with, who 23 years later is now my wife. And we would chit chat. And one day I said, hey, what are you doing this weekend? She said, I'm taking a course. So what kind of course? She said, well, I want to apply to be a dentist and you have to take a course to write this test. I said, okay, I'll take the course just to hang out with her. So between my orthodontist, who every 6 weeks was telling me to become a dentist, this pretty girl who said, hey, I'm going to take this course and I want to tag along, things started to roll. And then between, got some good marks, took the course, did really well, applied to a few schools, got in, and all of a sudden I said, guess I'm not going to be a gym teacher or a physiotherapist. Looks like dentistry is going to be the path. So until the age of 21, it wasn't even in my consideration. But like most good things in life, you kind of follow the path and it leads you where you need to be. And it's been a great career for the last 17 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's surprising how many people I've interviewed who have said that where they are today was just by a fluke and kismet, serendipity, whatever you want to call it. And it's never a straight path. And I think it's super important for people to understand that it's not always a straight path. So what's one funny moment that you can remember from someone inside the dental chair that you have?
I answered the last question with my own experience as a little kid. I think one of the funniest experiences had to do with a young patient of mine. And it was in maybe the first 6 months of my own work. So, I graduated and I was really good at dealing with people and all ages. And I pride myself on being able to bond with everyone. And I remember walking in, I was working in a dental office inside a mall. And I was meeting a kid for the first time. He was 7 years old. And I had myself prepared, first appointment, he's going to be nervous. I knew what I was going to say. I had a little magic trick ready. I had a joke ready. And I
Yeah.
walked into the room and he looked at me, screamed at the top of his lungs. I was ready with my magic trick and my joke. I hadn't said a word, got up and started running. And the funny part was that he didn't stop running. He ran out of the dental chair. He ran out of the dental office. He ran down the hall of the mall. And, 7-year-old kids sprinting
Yeah.
top speed. Mom starts to run, dad starts to run, I start to run. So for him, I'm always curious, 15, 16 years later, what he thinks of that experience. Because to me, that was one where I said, okay, you can plan forever, but you
Yeah.
never know what you can get when you walk into that room. So I hope that kid, maybe one day will become a dentist and remembers that memory.
I've talked to a lot of dentists, and that is a first for me too. Now, the real question: did he get back in the chair?
Yeah, no, not that day because they left. And so I ran a little bit down the hall. I was okay, I guess I can't run forever. Mom and dad ran. They got him. They gave us a call and said, let's rebook. I saw him, I think, a few weeks later and things proceeded and we were fine. But I remember on the second trip back, mom and dad stood by the door of the dental operatory so he couldn't sprint back out. And the kid had great teeth. So it didn't actually end up being anything
Really?
traumatic. That moment really resonated and stayed with me for a long time.
I know that people fear the dentist a lot. I know my mom feared the dentist a lot. How do you quell those fears? I mean, magic tricks for kids and stuff, that doesn't really work with adults sometimes. So do you have to I know that you have on your website, you have a first visit protocol that you recommend everyone to do. What are some other ways that you ease the anxiety of your patients?
Over the years, we learn all sorts of fancy tricks, but the reality comes down to human relationships. That's my experience, and figuring out, okay, this specific human being, this specific person, what is the root cause? Typically, the anxiety comes from negative childhood experiences. Sometimes it comes from people's own kind of claustrophobia, or just the discomfort of having a total stranger that close to you in a confined space. Sometimes it's the potential for pain. Sometimes it's the cost. So part of the reason I have that protocol is, and the protocol, if anyone is curious, is no needles or drills on the first appointment. Typically, it's just a conversation and it's getting to know each other. It's doing an assessment. We don't typically, unless it's an emergency, do anything invasive the first appointment. It's to figure out, okay, what can we do as dentists to just kind of take a step back and help the patient get more comfortable. And there's no magic trick. You don't go from being anxious to totally comfortable, but like any human relationship, can we just nudge it along to a point where maybe after a few years, you actually look forward to coming in?
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be a balance. I mean, with music lessons, there are people who just don't have confidence in themselves, like people who say I don't have any musical talent, like yourself, and so it's similar. But fear is like, it's funny because I've met many parents over the years who have been scarred by music lessons as a child, but sometimes like just the dentist is more psychological than it is something like something negative has happened. Would you say that's most of the case?
For kids, absolutely. And
Yeah.
the reality for kids is very often their fear stems from the parent's fear. And so there's a lot of dental offices where they'll ask you ask the parents not to come into the room. Because as parents, if we're anxious, kids, they may not be able to verbalize it, but they're very intelligent. They're very
Yes.
emotionally intelligent. So if they
Yeah.
sense fear and if they sense anxiety in the parent, they tend to be fearful and anxious. And
Great
for
point.
us, communication issue, say, hey, mom, I'm trying to offend you. I'm not trying to put you down. But I think your child actually may be able to tolerate this if we have them in a more controlled environment. And to be delicate with the communication, we have to be aware of the relationships, but that sometimes works. And then once we can do work, I always joke, my biggest fear is that someday when I'm an old man, there'll be some little kid at the dinner table telling a horror story about Dr. Tabesh. And I never want that to happen. And so a
Great guiding
driving
light.
force Yeah, is a driving force in the way we approach our patients, especially kids, is to make sure that we do it with empathy and kindness so that they can have a decent experience. Doesn't have to be
Yeah.
perfect on day one. At least the relationship can build over time.
Yeah, I can agree. There are some parents who come into a music lesson and they want to discipline their child, and that's not what they should be there. If your child is nervous, you should just be there and be, just almost silent and not say much. So I know that parent involvement, as well intentioned as it is can be it is. You do have to balance the two patients. Definitely. Now you
I'm a parent. I'm a parent myself, and you see it in music. I see it in dentistry.
yeah,
When my kids play sports, the coaches say the same thing. They say, "Hey, parents, your job is to support. Let me
yeah.
do my job, and then
Yeah.
we can reconvene to figure out how we can customize it for your child."
And I think that that's the best way to do any business with any customer. Just put customers' expectations and values first within reason. Obviously, there are some patients who probably come in with an unrealistic expectation. And how do you handle those types of patients who don't understand that, sorry, but you have 42 cavities, you can't just not fill them, you will be in severe pain or something health related.
Yeah, so this communication, like everything else, becomes a huge key. Most people, I'd say 99% of people, if you take the time, you talk to them in their language, in their style of language, you try to keep a logical approach and gain some trust, then they start to understand. One of the things that I've seen over the 17 years is with those patients, very often it becomes a matter of me not saying sit in the chair and do the work, saying, hey,
Yeah.
if you don't, like you said, if you don't do the work, this is what's going to happen, and that's what's going to happen. And then in 6 months or in a year, when that thing happens,
Yeah.
they come back and go, oh, you weren't lying to me. You weren't trying to scam me. It wasn't a sales tactic. And that simple little thing starts the wheels turning. And over years, they go, okay, this guy, maybe what he's predicting is happening. So let me get ahead of it. Trust becomes a thing. And in my profession, and for whether it's justifiable or not, people are sometimes slow to trust, which is okay. It's understandable. And that
Yeah.
becomes it's our responsibility to build that trust, to prove that we're trustworthy.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board there. Now, how does Locke Street Dental differentiate itself from other dental practices? It can be challenging. You all same service, but what is one thing that you said no? This is what I want, and these are the values that I want to demonstrate to my customer. What are some other ways that you've set yourself apart?
So there's a lot of really good dental offices in Hamilton. There are, and there are some that I would say maybe not as great. And so when you're building a brand, when you're building a business, go, what is our identity? One of the things that I was big on is we will not do any gimmicks. So there's a lot of corporate interest in dentistry. So there's a lot of gimmicky. Hey, this is free or that's free, but it's not really free. There's an
Right.
upsell. There's a backdoor to say, okay, we're going to take a principled, honest, fair, straightforward approach. And we'll tell people how it is. No gimmicks to get people in the door. If they don't think that we're the right fit for them, we're not going to try to force it. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in organic growth and relationships. And I think
Yeah.
that's what sets us apart. And then my job as the leader becomes to make sure that that starts from that first appointment where it's communication and the patient can decide, hey, are we right for them? We can decide, is the patient right for us? And then you start to build the relationship from there. Trying to force it or finagle someone to walk in the door, I don't think works out very well.
Yeah.
And
I think
it
you get a
doesn't.
very short-term customer. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The reality again, after so many years of doing it, is there's very few healthcare providers people see as often as they see their dentist or their hygienist. Short term doesn't benefit anybody. It's in the patient's best interest to meet people they know, they like, they trust, and then go for it for 20, 25 years. And sometimes it's us, sometimes it's not, but that's okay. As long as in the long term, the benefit is in the patient's favor.
Yeah. I mean, you have 150 five-star reviews, which is super impressive. Um, what do you think contributes to that patient satisfaction? Have you systematized your reviews that you always try to ask for them? Because it's one thing that I know that a lot of businesses have trouble with is asking for reviews.
I have trouble. I you know I, I've said a couple times as we've talked, I'm all about organic and not forcing things. So I have such a hard time saying, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, since you're telling us how much you love us, do you mind giving a 5-star review?" My
Yeah,
staff are much better.
right.
And so again, I don't ask every patient that my staff doesn't ask every patient. But if someone says, "Hey, you guys were exceptional," I want to tell my friends, say, do you mind telling your friends on Google or on Rate MDs or whatever it might be?
Yeah,
And it's nice. It feels good. In the end, we're healthcare providers, but we're still human. So when someone says something nice or when you've done something that someone appreciates, it means something. Um, so we don't have 1,000, and I think we probably lost some when we changed business names, so some disappeared. But um, it's something where we try to have an honest conversation, and I think
yeah,
most customers, most patients nowadays are aware of how important it is for a business to get, especially one that's starting out, to get
yeah.
some reviews. And some of the sorry, I tend to be just long-winded in my conversations.
That's okay.
One of the one of the best new patient experiences I had as a dentist is somebody came in and they said, "You have lots of good reviews." He says, "I read a bad one." And he said, "And your reply to the bad one is what made me come in."
Yeah,
Because I recall what the bad review was, but it was a little bit unfair. And it was one of those situations, just the trust, the vibe just wasn't there. And the patient generalized it to the entire world. And I think the response was somewhere along the lines of, "Hey, we're doing our best.
yeah,
It's nothing personal. We'll always
yeah.
do our best, and we wish you the best of luck." So the negative review actually got me someone's trust because they saw that the response wasn't mean spirited. We're good people trying to do good work, and that's all we can do.
It is very important to reply to every review, even negative reviews, because how you respond, it's true. We are all human as business owners and we can make mistakes. And I think taking accountability and showing that in the review is important. I did remember
Absolutely.
one music teacher, she started just getting angry with the reviewer, and I was part of a group of music school owners, and we were all like, you need to chill out, you're making it worse by continuing to go down it. The only thing that I find frustrating with the reviews is just we got a 1-star review from someone who had never taken our service, and that's open to things, and it's just frustrating when I'll take it. I'll take the hit if I've made a mistake or any of my team have made a mistake. But when you haven't even given them service, I guess it's par for the course. But I find I find it funny because it's just not how I think about things.
That's happened, and it's the most frustrating thing because you put in the blood, sweat, and tears, and someone doesn't like the sign on your door or
Yeah,
your hours or whatever.
yeah,
It's very frustrating. I agree. That's the one that irks me as well.
yeah, yeah,
Is someone who's never had a relationship saying, "Nah, no good." It's
yeah. No,
unfortunate.
yeah, it's just frustrating. Now you mentioned earlier that you don't do anything gimmicky, which is fantastic. So you do offer a wide range of services, like cleanings and implants. So then, how do you decide what treatment paths you're going to offer, and what's right or wrong for each individual case? Obviously, within reason, because it's going to be somewhat objective for that person.
So one of the things that we are big on is taking an approach to dentistry that's very healthcare oriented and less
Mm,
business oriented. And that by that I mean we have really good relationships with a lot of specialists in the area. We live in a specialized world. If you go to a lawyer, there's a specialized lawyer for every little detail. When you go to
yes.
a dentist or a dental specialist, it's the same. So one of the things we try not to do is to force onto patients treatments that we're good at. So when we zone in on a patient, our job, we're like essentially a family dentist is your GP in medicine. We're the quarterback. And so we tell
Right.
you, identify the problems, identify the solutions, provide the solution that's best for the patient. And then if we can do it in-house at our office, we will. We've got 3 dentists. We all have varied skills. If we can, great. If not, though, we are not shy to call our friends. We have oral surgery friends at Rockwood Oral Surgery, or our periodontist friends down the street. All these different specialists. There's a really good endodontist downtown Hamilton, using all the best specialists, because in the end, some business-minded people will think, oh, you should do the work, keep the business in-house. But in healthcare, the rule is give the patient the best care. And part of building the trust and part of building the brand is aligning ourselves with high quality support, high quality specialists. And we really do that. So to answer your question, our job is identify the problem, provide solution options, and then from there decide who is the best person to provide the solution. We can probably do 85% of it, but we won't overstep at things that are not in our wheelhouse.
Nice. And then, what's a common misconception that customers do have about routine dental care?
That it's one size fits all, or that there's a couple of ways you can do it, and that's it. The reality of dentistry is like everything else with health, is we're all genetically dealt a hand. I'll use general health as an example. If you're born perfectly healthy versus born with, let's say, diabetes, someone with diabetes, their healthcare journey is going to be very different than someone whose health is perfect. Dentistry is the same way. I have patients who walk in, don't brush, don't floss, somehow have never had a cavity in their life. And I have other patients who walk in and they do everything by the book. Yeah. And
I've never had a
6 months. Never. Yeah. And so it's a very customized thing. So I have probably over somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 patients I'm responsible for. I can't give you 1 or 2 or 3 treatment plans. Every single person is unique. And so that's maybe a misunderstanding that people have. I should have my cleanings every 6 months, or if I have more than 2 fillings a year, it's a problem. No, it's very individualized and unique to patients. Just give me 1 second. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, go ahead. Somebody walked in the door.
That's okay. It's not like you're running a business or anything.
No, not like that.
So then how do you balance the demands of, you run the business, you also have to stay up to date with your education and stay up to date with your dentistry licenses. Isn't that a lot? Like, that sounds like I'm overwhelmed just reading that, those amount of demands.
Yeah, and then on the side, you have to be a parent and a chauffeur and drive kids around.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And like any business, it's not for the faint of heart. But if there's a good driving force, if there's a good long-term plan, and we genuinely enjoy it, then you make it work. It's definitely, sometimes my friends look at me and they go, put in 80 hours a week between you work full-time as a dentist, but you're also the CEO, the COO, the chief marketing guy, the podcast guy. You're doing a little bit of everything. It becomes a challenge. But if you enjoy it and there's a long-term vision, then most things people can make work.
And are you systems oriented from the very beginning of whenever you start something that benefits your practice?
I'm a very flexible person, but I think it's important to have some systems. And the simplest one was that new patient intake. I'm big on making sure that everything is smooth from day one, and that we have multiple layers to prevent problems from spiraling. And one of the things we all learn is, typically when a problem arises, it's not because one thing went wrong. It's because 3 or 4 things went wrong and aligned and created a problem. So that in that sense, I am. But we're always learning. Dentistry is good because we got a basic foundation of how the businesses are run in general, and then in the modern era, we tweak it to meet the modern demands of the patients.
It's funny that you mentioned that about 3 or 4 things going wrong for one. I find the same thing. It's like I'm batting 1,000, and then one person will get every either digital glitch or something overlooked, and it's just like, no, of all the people, why does it always have to fall on that one person? And it's just, it's humbling, though. It makes you kind of, it's like, why did this happen? And so it's a great way to unfortunate way, but a great way to reevaluate your systems to make sure that they're always in alignment. Um, the dental care plan is rolling out. The Canadian dental plan is rolling out.
Yes.
Go ahead. Do you need to chat?
No, that's okay.
Perfect.
I
So
mean,
the Canadian,
sorry, I'm just going to ask this gentleman one thing. Give me 30 seconds.
yeah, sure.
I'm going to be about 20 minutes. Did you need anything specific? Okay, awesome. Thanks, baby. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So the Canadian dental plan is rolling out. How do you see it impacting dental practices in general, and also how it's going to impact patient care for communities in Hamilton, like Hamilton?
You
Sorry.
know, I've been in Hamilton for 17 years, and I've seen different programs. The city has run programs, the province has run programs, and it's unfortunately it's never been ideal. And when the Canadian Dental Program ran out, there was a lot of anxiety and stress, and all of our organizations were really worried. Um, right now, it's being run well, and
Yeah.
it's not without its problems. But on the as a dentist who practices day to day with my hands, seeing patients have better access to care is
Yeah.
huge. And
Yeah.
I think this program, the way it's rolled out, has created an environment where more people can have access to care. The kind of treatment that they help cover is the things that people need. They're not going to cover implants and veneers and super high end stuff, but it
Yeah.
keeps people out of pain, keep people functional. Aesthetically, it's enough to maintain our dignity on a day to day basis. Because if you're going for a job interview, hygiene and aesthetics matter. People judge you
Yeah.
on these types of things on a day to day basis. For kids, pain, infection, it matters. And so I think the program's done well. The challenge is it sustainable?
Yeah.
And how do we sustain it? And how do we keep, on one hand, from providers misusing it, and on the other hand, making sure that patients are treated well and that things don't get out of control? Because in the end, there's also budgetary restrictions, I imagine, at some level, and so
Yep.
it'll be interesting to see how the politics of that works out. But on the ground, it's working out very nice.
Nice. And would you say that patients' behavior expectations have changed since you've opened your clinic? Now with the Canadian Dental, is there an expectation that's changed?
One of the challenges we have is the marketing of what the program said it was versus what it is. So
Right.
it's not as robust. It's not perfectly free and offers everything at the drop of a dime as
Yeah.
it was marketed to some patients. And so
Mm.
when people come in the clinic, again, right off the bat, it's trying to say, listen, we're not the bad guy. They're not
Yeah.
the bad guy. There was some
Yeah.
marketing that was done that maybe overpromised a little bit. And so here's how it actually looks. Here's what we can do as an office to help navigate it for you. Here's the type of work that may be covered. Here's the type of work that won't be covered, and
Mm.
trying to get that going. So, and it becomes a communication thing with patients. That was the only negative with the Canadian Dental Plan is the marketing overpromised versus what they
Yeah.
actually were willing to cover and pay for. But that's something, as any business, you have to communicate with your patients about.
Yeah, but I do know in the healthcare though, and which obviously dentistry is in, the healthcare is limited in what they can and can't market. So are there certain things that you've tried to do to offset the expectations of this program compared to what you're allowed to say about this program? Does that even make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've done, and it's very simple, is when people inquire, we
Mm.
before they even come into the clinic, we make sure we either through email or a phone call have a conversation to say, hey, this is the this is maybe what you're expecting. This is the reality of how things work on the ground.
Right.
This is what we can do, you, and make sure that if a patient does want to come here, that they understand what we can do and what we can't do. Because we don't want to
Mm.
overpromise either. It's unfair to the patient if they have a certain expectation and we overpromise and we don't meet that demand.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's new technologies and techniques that are coming out. What's something that you're excited about that you want to bring to your practice within the next few years? Is there anything on the horizon?
There's two main things that are really focused in, and they're all technology based. One is AI, AI in terms of communications. So when a patient calls in and wants to book an appointment, wants information that maybe, once upon a time would mean being on hold for 20 minutes. And now an AI agent can answer a simple question fairly quickly. And we can train the AI agents to provide quick responses. I think that's promising.
Yeah.
That AI is moving into diagnosis. So reading x-rays, providing treatment plans. You still need a dentist to oversee it, because my experience currently with systems is they tend to overdiagnose and over recommend,
Right.
and we don't want to overdo what patients need. But that's a big one. The second one is lasers. We talked earlier about anxiety with dentistry. Is lasers are very promising to take away the drill, you know,
Yeah.
to fix problem, maybe in a more modern, less invasive way. And that's been on the horizon for probably 15 years. And the technology is getting better. It's not there yet, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping that in the next decade or two, we're in a situation where there's fewer injections, there's fewer drills, a little bit more seamless treatment. So those are two things that I'm kind of looking forward to, and I hope I'll see in my career.
That's cool. Yeah. The laser thing is really, really cool. I know that myself when I'm in the chair and I hear the drill, you tense, right?
Of course,
It's that noise. Something's coming. It's that anticipation. So then on the flip side,
absolutely.
then what do you see as the biggest challenges for dentistry in 2026 and going?
The biggest challenges are actually not technology or dentistry based. It's what's happening in the background of the business. So dentistry, like a lot of businesses, is there's a lot of private equity and corporate interest coming in and taking over. And so for us, a big challenge is how do you compete with billion-dollar companies as a mom and pop shop? And I think that's something that a lot of businesses on this strip and now across Hamilton and across Ontario feel. There's big corporate entities that are sweeping in, buying everything up, and
Yep.
you battle and crawl and you fight to try and stay up. But I think that's the biggest challenge for family-owned practices or dentist-owned practices. How do you compete with the giants?
It's true. And I mean, my dad was a commercial real estate appraiser, and the first thing that he noticed was, why are dentists on main floor of buildings? Dentists have always been on the second floor, but I think it is because of corporate purchasing of buildings. They have moved it to the lower level, which again makes it more expensive for the ma and pa type businesses to compete, because now they want the you do get noticed on the main floor more than you do on a second floor. So I think it's been in the making for some time. And it's funny how the signal that is different than, from dentists. I just heard that from another industry of just purchasing real estate. So
Yeah,
I'm sure you
absolutely.
noticed that.
And it's funny that you use the second floor versus main floor analogy, because our office was in the second floor of a building,
Yeah.
was for decades.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you go, hey, we can't compete with the other guys. We're not visible. And so we are now on the main floor. And yes, it's more expensive, but you go, okay, if this is the way it needs to go, this is the way it needs to go. And I'm not a fighter, but I like a good battle. So I said, okay, let's see if we can compete with the big boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think again,
that's part of the fun of being a business owner is taking on those challenges.
I think one thing that the mom pa have that the big companies don't, and I actually learned this. I was speaking with the former CEO of the Royal Conservatory of Toronto in Toronto, and he said he said you're in a great position because you can be nimble. And I think that one challenge that corporate has is that they cannot be nimble. They plan 2 to a year in advance, and when you need to shift that ship, it is really challenging. So and also you have more accessibility to the community and to knowing your neighbors. I think there's a lot of value in that.
especially, we have to look at it a business to business type of thing.
Yeah.
I said it earlier. Very few healthcare professionals you see, people typically will see their family doctor maybe once a year, some less, some more. There's very few people you see more often than the dentist. And I think that's our competitive edge is to say, hey, if, one of my hygienists has been here for over 20, two of them actually, over 20 years. No amount of corporate marketing can replace
Yep.
a 20-year relationship.
It's true.
Myself have been downtown Hamilton for 17 years now. Yeah, it's very difficult to replace that relationship. If it wasn't a relationship centered profession,
Yeah.
then we'd be in a lot more trouble competing with the corporates because they're more lean, they're more efficient, they've got bigger budgets, so it's hard to compete when there's no human element to it.
That's a fantastic point because one thing that we pride ourselves on as well is getting a commitment to the teacher, and the relationship is we ask our teachers to commit to at least a year because kids are used to changing teachers from grade to grade. So we don't think that that's unreasonable,
Yes.
and it's hard to keep someone for a long time. One of the parents' expectations that they want is they want that teacher who has been teaching for 20 years and but it's just in our field it's not feasible. So it's fantastic that you're able to have that consistency because that is another way to ease patients anxieties. It's a way to have continuity. It's like, okay, I know this, I know these people, they're my friends, they're in my community. And then
Yeah,
on top of that, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. Then, what are some? Have you done any partnerships with any local businesses other than obviously the expertise of the professionals that you need to refer? But have you started looking at any businesses that you want to partner up with?
So there's a few layers there. So the first thing, where we moved and the building that we're in are all of the tenants are care oriented. So we've got eyes on lock, we got function 101, we got supernatural. So we start to build the relationship with the neighbors who are also in healthcare. We started to build and we have for over a decade now, the relationships with the doctors and the specialists in the area. And then one of the things on Lock we're trying to do is to get to know all the neighbors and the little businesses. So one simple way of getting to know people is, we went along and we said, hey, we'll hold little raffles and purchase gift cards from the different businesses. And if you come in as a new patient, here's a gift card to one of the other neighboring businesses. Those types of things, just to get the ball rolling in the ice to get to know each other. So those are the layers. So it's the immediate neighbors, then the professional neighbors, then the other businesses along the strip geographically. So it's kind of been our approach so far.
I do love how 101 Lock has become like this health hub. Like it is cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's going to be great as a
I think all we're
destination.
missing is a family doctor.
Yeah, that's all you need.
absolutely.
Yeah, main floor family doctor is harder to harder to find. I think that
It's a hard one.
but we can do it.
Absolutely. I
So,
think, and people, it's been a really good experience here for sure.
yeah, this is a great neighborhood, and it is. We have great neighbors and great people, and the businesses on Locke Street are second to none for sure. If you could give
Absolutely.
one piece of advice to someone who started their own dental practice, what would it be?
I think being a business owner and being a dentist are very different things. And so the
Yeah,
advice I give to all the younger dentists is master the craft first. I'm sure it's the same with music. You don't want to start a music school, I would imagine, if you don't have a good ear and a good idea of music, I would imagine. So they have to master the craft first because there's no bigger challenge than starting a business. The layers of challenges and layers of learning are vast. And
yeah.
if you're not a master of your first, it can be extremely overwhelming. It's overwhelming when you're a master of your craft. So it can be much more overwhelming there. And the second would be what we've talked about the entire time. All the gimmicks in the world can maybe look good on social media, but nothing beats human relationships. So being a good person and doing good work in the long run in our profession always wins.
That's awesome. Shahab, it's been great chatting with you. This has been people think that dentistry is going to be boring, but you are far from boring, that's for sure. And I want to
you.
thank you very
Thank you
much
as well. It's been a pleasure.
for coming on, and we'll do this again for sure. I love having follow-ups as well.
Thank you very much for letting me come on and talk about something that's generally very boring. I had a great time. Who knew you could have fun talking about dentistry on a podcast, right? But I really appreciate your time and the invitation.
It's great. All right. We'll talk soon then.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much.